And back to U.S. Secretary of State visit to Beijing. I'm joined on World Now by a former U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Economic and Business Affairs. He was Ambassador to Argentina and Deputy Ambassador to Afghanistan. He served nearly 4 years as Ambassador to Mexico. Earl Wayne, thank you for joining us on the program this hour.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
So last year, President Biden met with President Xi in Indonesia, where both leaders talked about easing bilateral tensions and also agreed to reopen communication channels. 7 months after that meeting, we're now witnessing perhaps the highest level trip by a U.S. official to China in nearly 5 years. Talk to us about how significant this trip is, saying that it was cancelled earlier in the year over a suspected Chinese spy balloon.
Well, I think the spy balloon certainly set off a lot of worries in Washington and made it very hard for Secretary Blinken to visit Beijing after the discovery of this spying. So this is really an effort to restart the relationship, to restart the dialogue. The relationship, of course, has continued. China remains the third largest trading partner of the United States, but the dialogue has deteriorated significantly. And there's a wide agenda of issues that China and the United States need to talk about. They don't agree on a lot of them, but there are areas where they do agree. And so this is a very important start. And it sounds like it was a successful reinitiation of this dialogue. And I think we'll be seeing more conversations in the weeks ahead to try to work on this very important dialogue.
Interesting. Let's look at what the two gentlemen talked about. While Blinken was talking about opening diplomatic channels to reduce the risk of misperception, the Chinese foreign minister was quoted to have said China is committed to building a stable, predictable, and constructive relationship with the U.S. I'm wondering just how feasible this proposal is of a stable and predictable relationship with what appears a long list of disputes and legitimate differences between the two countries.
Well, I think it is quite feasible. It doesn't mean that they will agree on all issues, but what they can do is find those issues where there's room for improvement and progress, those issues where there will just continue to be disagreement, and they can minimize the chance for very unfortunate clashes, like we've seen with a number of incidents in the South China Sea, where military ships and aircraft have come very close to each other. And so I think that's all very important as we go forward. The trading relationship remains robust, but there are a number of differences over what should be traded and what limits should be perhaps placed on, let's say, for example, exports of high technology from the United States, about some Chinese practices, about the U.S. being too reliant on critical mineral production and battery production from China. So those will be discussed and will be worked through in both countries. But there are also some areas where there could be work together, for example, on global climate change going forward, on the shipping of illicit chemicals that are used to produce deadly drugs in other countries that are imported into the United States, on exchanges, which really have diminished significantly in recent years, that could again be expanded. So there's a lot where you could be talking and working, some of which you'd reach agreement, other of which you'd have differences that you'd just be working over a long time. But I think also very importantly, if we can get to the point of reducing the military-related tensions and have dialogue not only about the South China Sea and Taiwan, but also about nuclear arms reduction as we move forward, that would be very important.
Well, we look forward to those conversations. The Chinese foreign minister has now also been invited to visit Washington. Both men agreed to schedule a reciprocal visit, and it looks like it's going well. But what's the best, do you think, would come out of an improved communication between both countries? You've talked about areas where dialogue can, make progress, but are you optimistic of a dramatic improvement in relations?
No, I'm not optimistic about dramatic improvement because I think a lot of these differences are built into the fact that there is in reality a rivalry between China and the United States at present, especially in the economic area, globally, where China is a rising strength and is trying to expand its influence. The United States is trying to maintain its relationship and rebuild relationships with some countries where China has established an economic advantage. So there'll be that rivalry that will be going on. There is also, China has very ambitious goals for building up its own technological capacities, and that includes military-related capacities. And so I think there'll be continued sparring over a lot of these technological issues. But that doesn't mean you can't reach understandings in these areas. Similarly, there will be a continued disagreement in all likelihood over Taiwan, where China very much wants Taiwan to be formally reintegrated into China. The Taiwanese don't necessarily want that, and the United States is speaking up for Taiwanese deciding their own future. And so that will be an area of long discussion. And just as a reminder, that was the major issue when the United States and China first normalized relations way back in the 1970s. So this is a constant issue that's gone forward. It's become very tense again in recent years and in recent months. So you can work to lower tensions even if you aren't going to solve the issue in the near term. So I think we should look for gradual, step-by-step signs of progress, signs of serious dialogue, but not expect dramatic breakthroughs as we move forward.
Really interesting days ahead, Mr. Wayne. It's been a roller coaster relationship between both countries since 1949. It will be interesting to see how the maneuver issues like Taiwan that you talked about, particularly Beijing's one China policy. Thank you so much for talking to us on the news this hour.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Earl Wayne is former U.S. Assistant Secretary of State for Economic and Business Affairs and former ambassador to Argentina as well as Mexico.